Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Going to monologue a little bit at the start before we bring in our guest. And what I wanted to jump into was something we spoke about on early edition on Wednesday. And that is, what's the model for the Patriots' power structure? Who should they copy, for lack of a better word? You look at the four teams that are remaining: the Niners, the Lions, the Chiefs, and the Baltimore Ravens. And all of them are a little bit different. And we also can look at some of the teams that have had success: Miami, Houston. These are young teams with young head coaches by and large, and differing kinds of sets of general manager situations. One thing that I think is the most important for the Patriots to establish right now is a GM head coach chemistry that is absolutely simpatico. That you have a coach in Jerod Mayo, who right now seems to have the final say for this franchise, and he said that earlier this week, who has given a vision to the personnel department and to Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf that is so clear that they can't help but in their evaluations that are virtually done now, they're presenting Mayo with players who fit those evaluations. Now, is it as opaque as I want fast, strong, physical, and smart? Maybe. I mean, what head coach doesn't want that? What personnel man doesn't want that? What specific measurables does Jerod Mayo want? Or what specific measurables have Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh unearthed that are going to be the best for the New England Patriots in the climate they play in the division they play in, against the teams that they play against? See, that's what's so difficult about moving on from Bill Belichick. You knew what the measurables were. We knew as media and fans for decades what the skinny was on linebackers in a Patriots system, what they like to have in safeties, what they like to have in corners. We knew it by like the back of our hands. And maybe Jerod Mayo wants the exact same things. Or maybe he wants to tweak it. This was a very interesting quote from Mayo earlier this week, speaking on WEEI. Let's listen to it.
We're bringing in talent 1,000%. So have a lot of cap space.
Love it.
And cash. Yeah. Ready to burn some cash.
The portion of that comment that drew attention was burn some cash. The more important part, if you're a Patriots follower, is the straight-on, flat-out, bold-faced admission that we're pursuing talent 1,000%. Because as we've perceived outside, and as the team has perceived coaches, players inside, there's a talent deficit. You can't have a single Pro Bowler on your football team. Zero, none. I mean, the Pro Bowl is the easiest thing in the world to get into. And even if 9 guys drop out from the AFC, I still don't know who's next in line for a Pro Bowl spot for the Patriots. They're not talented. They're extremely deep in special teamers. You got your Chris Boards, you got your, Brendan Schoolers, Matt Slater, just on and on and on and on of the money invested. And certainly it paid dividends at many different times, but it's pretty well established that the Patriots have spent a lot of roster spots and time on special teams as the NFL continues to make it more and more obsolete. So if the Patriots are bringing in talent, that means some of the measurables and the characteristics may start to switch. So what does bringing in talent look like? Well, Patriots are positioned well. They have about $60 million in cap space. They have the 3rd overall pick. They have the 34th overall pick, 68th, something like that, coming up in the 3rd round. They have plenty of artillery to go and make their team better with talent. But what's it look like? And if we look at some of these teams that I mentioned who are playing in the Final Four this weekend, or who are teams with a general manager, head coach simpatico, the mindset that those teams have taken on is aggressiveness, bold aggressiveness. Take a team like the Houston Texans. They had this year a first-year head coach. In D'Amico Ryans, they had a first-year offensive coordinator, and Bobby Slowick. They did have an experienced GM, and they did do a very good job of building their team prior to drafting C.J. Stroud. But they also spent on talent, established talent and new talent. For instance, Devin Singletary, free agent running back, who was previously with the Bills. They went out and spent on him. Robert Woods and John Mechie are guys that they went and got for the wide receiver position. Mechie was a draft pick out of Alabama. Nico Collins was valuable. Dalton Schultz, he is a tight end free agent, I believe, signed away from Dallas. Laramie Tunsil was grabbed in a trade with the Miami Dolphins. Shaq Mason, also on their offensive line. He was with the Bucks. He's still one of the best in the league. Used to be a Patriot. You know that. That's talent. That's not a fleet of guys who might have played pretty well against you one time, i.e. Juju Smith-Schuster or Devontae Parker. Those are guys with a backlog of experience and production who, in many cases, prior to coming to the Houston Texans, were coming off a good year. And before I get to another team, let's talk about a guy who's coming off a good year that there may be considerations of. Probably the closest to a Pro Bowl player on the Patriots right now is Mike Onwenu. He plays guard. He's got tackle versatility. He played tackle at the end of the season. He's going to command a good amount of money. Even though he's not a Pro Bowler, even though he's not an All-Pro, you see it year in and year out. Pro Football Focus ranks him as one of the best players in the league. You can sniff at Pro Football Focus and whether or not they know what they're talking about, but they are a standard that the league trusts. And Onwenu is a highly consistent, highly dependable, highly productive guard. The Patriots will need to ante up for that talent. Talent in-house is just as important as talent out of house. Now, let me get on to another team here. Let's talk a little bit about Miami. What did Miami do to make its team better with a first-year head coach and with a fairly inexperienced general manager in Chris Grier? Chris Grier won a power struggle with Brian Flores. I think he won it by knockout because Flores was difficult to get along with down there. But Chris Grier was able to save Tua Tagovailoa by inserting a head coach in Mike McDaniel who was not shunting Tua over to the side. Additionally, they went out and they got themselves Tyreek Hill. Additionally, they were able to get Jalen Waddle in the draft a couple of years ago. So they were able to take all those positions and build a nest around their young quarterback that worked. So when the Patriots look at number 3 at Jaden Daniels or Drake May or Caleb Williams, if they go quarterback, what's the best way we can support this player with personnel and the style of player we're going to bring in? You have to be anticipatory. Additionally, you have to look at what's on your roster right now. And that's what's great about the fact that free agency comes before the draft. You have already shopped for a significant number of players in first wave and second wave free agency that allow you to say, when the draft comes along, how's Drake May going to work with this tight end or without that tight end? Because again, the Patriots don't have any tight ends under contract right now. Their wide receivers, the best one they have is a number 3. It's Demario Douglas. Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster are eminently replaceable. They don't have tackles. They have one running back. So they have a lot to do. But they have a great opportunity to do it. Take a look at another team. Take a look at the Niners. Take a look at the talent they've brought in. Were they always a great team? No, they were not. Have they always done the right thing? No, they haven't. They took Trey Lance at number 2, traded up to go get him, and they wind up with a 7th-round pick and Brock Purdy starting for them. But they were bold and went and got Christian McCaffrey in a trade from Carolina. They were smart when they drafted George Kittle and spent to re-sign him. They were smart when they drafted Deebo Samuel in the 2nd round. Their scouting department was sharp and understood he was a good player who could help them. They spent on the offensive line. So when you're looking at the New England Patriots and the things that they need to do, aggressiveness is definitely one of the things that Robert Kraft should be empowering Matt Groh, Elliott Wolf, and Jerod Mayo to be involved in. You want to make a trade? Do you think it's a good idea to go from 3 to 6 and pick up another first rounder? For instance, I don't know who's at 6 right now. Do it. Be bold. Or is it more bold it would be, to move up because you don't want to miss out on Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams. All of those things to me are what the Patriots need to be fostering right now with their general manager and with Jerod Mayo, which brings us to the question, okay, that's nice. Who's the general manager? They don't have one by title right now. It's Elliott Wolf and it's Matt Groh, who are going to be together through the draft, at least. They might be together all the way through 2024. They might never go away. Nobody will ever be given the title of GM. It's a lot to expect Jerod Mayo, though, to be the final say guy when he's only been the de facto defensive coordinator and a linebackers coach and doing it for 5 years. Now, a head coach, 1,000,000%, because that's a culture builder, that's an administrator, that's somebody who can go to every meeting on either side of the ball, sit down in those meetings, understand what's being talked about, give his input in a constructive way that actually advances the conversation so that people say, oh, okay, that was helpful. So if he walks into an offensive line meeting, he has to be able to offer something that is new. That's something Bill Belichick used to talk about with Tom Brady all the time. I have to bring something every week to him that's new. It will be difficult for Mayo relative to Bill Belichick to always have something in his pocket that other people haven't heard before, don't already know, haven't already unearthed. It's just the nature of where the two men are on their coaching journeys. When Bill got here in 2000, 25 years of coaching is what he had under his belt. A couple Super Bowls as defensive coordinator for the Bill Parcells Giants. So a massive personality he coached under and coordinated the defense for. He's watched all kinds of leadership styles, Bill has. What will Jerod take as the leadership style? It has to be collaborative because that's what Jerod Mayo will need right now. Because he can't do it on his own. He doesn't have everything downloaded into his software of what he needs to know. Which brings us to another question. When the Patriots are hiring coordinators and assistant coaches, who they are and what their aspirations are matter as much, in my opinion, as the ideas they're going to bring. Because when the Patriots talk about changing the culture within their organization, what they need to change is the silos that Jerod Mayo referred to and the walls. If you have a number of individuals who have been head coaches someplace else and still have aspirations to be head coaches again in your building, there might be a tendency to look at the rookie head coach who's never done it before and say, okay, he's not doing it right. And letting your disgust, agitation, or dismay be known. I could do it better. That's why I looked at the Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, hey, let's hire him back on the cheap idea. It's not a great one because they're beholden to Bill Belichick. And that's another dynamic that goes on within the Patriots and has gone on. If you're a lacrosse coach and then you get hired to coach football and you're a blank slate in football and you appreciate that opportunity, you'll run through a wall for Bill Belichick, but you only know how to do things Bill Belichick's way. If you're a young coach who grew up in the Patriot system, never went anyplace else, and then when you did go someplace else, you ended up having to come back because it didn't work out so good, you are beholden to Bill. You appreciate that. You're extremely loyal to him. Bill Belichick has and had a knack for building loyalty. He does it with coaches. He does it with players. Plucking players who might otherwise be overlooked, saying, you're my guy. And then showering that player with praise, oftentimes money, in huge roles. Does it with coaches. And you end up with a number of individuals who become very beholden to Bill Belichick. Even if they might be shaking their heads and kicking rocks and wondering what in God's name Bill's decisions are, in the end, They're beholden to Bill. Matt Patricia is a great example of that. In 2017, he was the defensive coordinator for a team that was getting its ass kicked by the Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC Championship game. And if it wasn't for Danny Amendola and Tom Brady marshaling a comeback in the fourth quarter with 2 touchdowns, it would have been an Eagles-Jaguars Super Bowl. Look it up. Meanwhile, they go into that Super Bowl and they lose 41-33. They give up 41 points to the Eagles, Nelson Aguilar, Nick Foles, LeGarrette Blount. Not a team that should be hanging 41 on a future head coach. And then he goes to Detroit and he hit the lottery. Hit the friggin' lottery. You go be a head coach, you're going to sign a contract anywhere between $30 and $50 million. You're not making that as an assistant head coach. So what Bill does in sending guys out into the world to become head coaches is he makes all their wildest dreams come true for their family and generations going forward. And then when those individuals come back, they're a little scorned. They're a little beaten down. If you're Joe Judge or Matt Patricia or Josh McDaniels in the past, but you try and learn from what you did. And you're going to get better. Now, those guys are fine with Bill. They're just looking around, seeing where my next job is. Anything out there? But if they're with another rookie head coach or a head coach that they feel they're more experienced in, is that a good situation to have that individual in? Where he's been out, he's made his $50 million. He's now come back, a scalded dog, and now he's working for this guy who's never done it before. See, that to me is what's vital in the staff building that Jerod Mayo does. Who wants to help him? Who wants this team to be really good? And how close is the future for that individual as a priority behind helping Jerod Mayo and the team get good? If it's not the top priority, if you can't check your ego and put everything toward helping the Patriots, Elliott Wolf, Matt Groh, Jerod Mayo, and everybody else who's a little wet behind the ears succeed as they install a different culture with less knowledge. That's the thing. It's a different culture. It's less knowledge. That's the Patriots trade-off. That's what the Krafts decided. We're going to take out the greatest head coach of all time because we don't like the way he does his business anymore, and we don't like the atmosphere. And we can take him when we're winning 9 games, but we ain't going to take it from him when we're winning 4. He's too expensive. He's too hard to work with. We don't like the way things feel around here. We don't like the development of players. Boop. Let's see how it goes with these guys. Risk? Yeah. But they're going to take that risk because with this guy in there going 4-13 ain't any fun for anybody. So now they're on to this next phase. And they have to have a simpatico general manager, head coach, in which whoever has final say, it does feel collaborative. And it's friggin' hard. You look at all these teams with GMs and head coaches who don't mesh. I think the Shanahan and John Lynch meshed nicely in San Francisco, obviously. I think John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta meshed nicely. DeCosta is the GM for the Baltimore Ravens, but Harbaugh's been there for so long, and DeCosta learned under Ozzie Newsome. So he understood the vision within that organization. All of these things are just really fascinating to watch and consider as the Patriots start to put things together, which brings me to my next point. I mentioned assistant coaches. And right now what's going on with New England is you have a fleet of assistant coaches in limbo. Here's why they're in limbo. With the coordinator searches going on offensively and defensively and special teams, more so offensively and defensively, you don't yet know who the coordinators want to work with as assistant coaches. So there are Patriots coaches right now who are coming into work, the ones who are still under contract. And I don't know exactly which. There are some expiring contracts on the coaching staff, some are not. Say, for instance, the Patriots hire Zach Robinson. Zach Robinson then comes in, and the Patriots will say, these are the assistant coaches we currently have under contract. Do you have a vision for working with this individual, or do you have other individuals that you would like to work with? Then they collaborate and decide what the best individual is. At offensive line, at wide receiver, at tight ends, at running backs. Now, there are Patriots assistant coaches who are going into work right now not knowing what the landscape is. Those coaches started to come back this week. They took some time off. Now they're coming back into the office. Same thing goes on the defensive side of the ball. That's something the Patriots have to solve really fast because the development has been insufficient. Is it because of the coaches? Is it because of the players? Is it because of one particular position group? Adrian Clem was the offensive line coach. Prior to him, it was and Billy Yates. Prior to him, it was Billy Yates and Matt Patricia. Bill Belichick was involved because Adrian Clem fell ill and Bill was involved with the offensive line. There's been Cole Popovich. There's been obviously Dante Scarnecchia. There's been a fleet of offensive line coaches. Somebody went to the Raiders. I can't remember the friggin' name. Be that as it may, what are the Patriots going to have in front of, say, Drake May? Who's going to be blocking for him? And who's coaching the guys who are blocking for him? Because Jerod Mayo is a defensive coach. Offensive line and offensive coordinator are the two most important coaching positions on this staff that are still open. You have to figure out what you're going to do on the offensive line, or you're going to take a third overall pick and kneecap him before he even gets out because you can't protect him. Because that's what happened with Mac Jones. Let's all be honest about it. We can noodle arm him all we want. We can talk about the face he makes when he gets injured. But the fact that he sucked this year is directly tied to the offensive line's inability to keep people off him. And eventually he got hit so much, he turtled, lost poise. He already knew that the sideline didn't have confidence in him. So the poop really hit the fan. Now he's got to go. Offensive line is the most important spot to build. If you're not going to do it in the draft, you better spend all your money in free agency. That's why Mike Onwenu needs to be re-signed. ASAFP. But these assistant coaches are in limbo. And they have to solve what's going to happen. Which brings us to one more thing before I bring in my guest. That's the Bill Belichick domino that has to fall. Where's Brian Belichick, safeties coach, going? Where is Steve Belichick, linebackers coach, defensive play caller, going? Do they know? With Bill seemingly also in limbo with the Atlanta Falcons job, which they have now interviewed everybody who's not nailed down, including Bill twice, but including Mike Vrabel twice, and former Panthers defensive coach twice. I mean, everybody's gone through there. But until Bill gets that job, or does not get that job, there are people who are directly related to him and who also have that loyalty to him who are wondering, well, if Bill goes to Atlanta, should I go? Maybe Josh McDaniels feels that way. Josh McDaniels might want to go with Bill to Atlanta, but if the Patriots turned to him and said, Josh, do you want to work here? Maybe he'd consider it. So there is a lot being held up staff-wise by the Atlanta Falcons and Bill Belichick. Why are there cold feet there? People I've talked to and have indicated their read on the situation is Bill and Arthur Blank established a good relationship and what looked like a good foundation for Bill Belichick to go in and take that job. And now, as the rubber meets the road, and they're really interrogating how Bill will do coming in, there are layers, multiple layers. General manager, team president, chief executive officer, and Arthur Blank. All of those different layers understand that they are now at risk if Bill Belichick comes in. So if you feel you're in one of those layers and you see the threat looming on the horizon, wouldn't you want to say to Arthur, are you sure you want to do this? Because have you heard of a guy named Tyquan Thornton, Arthur? Yeah, no, he's a wide receiver. Here's what he's done in 2 years. Did you ever hear of a guy named N'Keal Harry, Arthur? Yeah, no, here. Yeah. Jonnu Smith, right? We got him on our team. Do you want to see what he did in New England? All of that. Do you want to look at the financial decisions made? Do you want to look at the spending in 2021? Do you want to look at the drafts? Do you want to look at the climate up there in terms of how Bill's culture worked for that team? Do you have faith, Arthur, that he's going to get you where you need to go in 2 or 3 years? Because we have offensive pieces here. We just need a quarterback. But how's he done at quarterback? I mean, even when he had the greatest one of all time, he wanted to get him the frig out of the building as fast as he could. Is that what you're looking for? A guy who's got the best quarterback of all time standing in front of him who could still go down and play at an MVP level and win a Super Bowl? And he wants to get away from that ASAFP? Second time I've said that. Arthur, is that what you want to do? Okay. It's your funeral. So, a lot to plow through for the Falcons that impacts the New England Patriots, that impacts Jerod Mayo, that impacts his coaching staff, that impacts whoever they draft, that impacts your Patriots experience. We're going to get into all of that right now with Mark Dominik, former general manager in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, longtime analyst for ESPN. We're going to talk to him about the best way to set Jerod Mayo and the Patriots up for success in 2024 and beyond. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here he is, Mark Dominik. I told you a little bit about him prior. You said now that have been at ESPN prior, but now you're working with a company that goes around the country and helps prepare prospective players for the NFL.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the side thing I do, Tom, especially this time of year. It's a chance for me to meet with these young draft picks that are about to come into the National Football League, that are about to head to maybe an all-star game, a combine, a pro day, and give them a chance to like what to expect, right? I mean, if it was my son and he was going to go interview for a job at whatever, the grocery store or the whatever the job is, I'd want to be prepared a little bit and walk in there and be like, okay, maybe this is the best way I can present myself. So I run around the country and either meet with them face to face or over Zoom and just teach them how to interview, how to present themselves, better ways to answer questions and fun things like that. Like, Tom, you know, one of the questions, I'll ask you the question, see how you do, but what's the worst thing about football, Tom?
Worst thing about football?
Yep.
See, and that's where you have to talk to these kids and say, okay.
Exactly right? Because it's a very tricky answer.
My accurate answer, my truthful answer would be time constraints.
Right. And that's a fair one, right? Time management, time constraints, how to handle it. What I talk to these young men are like, you can come up with 3 things. I've got 3 answers, whatever's most comfortable for you. You can say the worst thing about football, losing, because it stinks and it's terrible. And
that's what they want to hear.
Right. And that's what they want to hear. Or you could talk about injuries because it's just part of the game. It doesn't have to happen to you, but it's part of the game. And so it's very frustrating when injuries happen, but you realize it's part of it. Or the third is, you can't play it forever. I'm 52. There's nobody playing a pickup game of football around my neighborhood, right? But you can play pickup basketball. You can play pickup other sports, but you can't play football forever. So those are the answers. We talk to them about that and kind of express what feels the most comfortable about those answers, because I want them to be naturally a good interviewer.
All right. As you were answering that or telling me that, I thought of another answer, because I bet this is very real in 2024. That would be how my family and those around me feel about social media and the scrutiny and the things I go through.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Because look at that. You look at the NFL, you get the highest level players like, Patrick Mahomes' wife will jump on social media sometimes and unload. Matthew Stafford's, I mean, the highest of the high, that would be an interesting thing to negotiate. Do you talk about social media with these kids?
A little bit. I encourage them. I tell them that the truth is, from this point all the way to the draft, and then really in your NFL career, everybody's going to tell you what's wrong with you. I mean, that's what scouts do, right? That's what we do, is we evaluate players and say, okay, here's his strengths, but here's his weaknesses. This is why this guy's not a good fit. You're always looking for like what's wrong with them. And I used to talk to my scouts about that. Let's stop thinking that way. Let's talk to me about what's right about him. Talk to me about what he can do, how this person can contribute to our football team in different ways, instead of, well, he's not quick twitch, or he doesn't have great ball skills. No, then why are we talking about him anyway? So let's talk about the good things. And when I talk to him about social media, Tom, I generally tell them the best thing you can do is try to avoid it, especially during this period, because everybody's going to have an opinion. When you get drafted, don't go on social media and be like, did people like the pick or not? Like, don't do that. Inevitably, out of the 100 people that post, 90 are going to be something negative and 10%. And then you know what? There's another 100 people that love the pick. They just don't go on social media and tell you because that's not exciting to say. This is great, but it's more that world. So you just got to remind yourself that if you want to go down that road, that you got to realize it's going to be difficult to manage and to kind of overcome mentally.
Speaking of difficult to manage, the Patriots are in a situation where they have extracted the greatest coach in NFL history who had tentacles, who leaves basically a footprint bigger than anyone will ever be allowed to imprint again in NFL history, perhaps. Yeah. And into that footprint goes Jerod Mayo. And he's going to change the culture, and he's going to help the team go from a 4-13 team to rediscovering success and implementing a different culture. What's the best way for the team to put him in a position to succeed in your estimation?
I think it's expectations. I think it's having one-on-one meetings with your current players. I think that would be one thing that I would strongly encourage, that he has a chance to kind of explain, especially to the leaders that are going to be on that football team in 2024.
So he's having those meetings.
I think he should. Yeah, I think
not the GM. Okay.
And I think you want to talk to the people that you already know that are going to be back no matter what. You don't want it to be every player. You don't need to do that because, but you do need to grab the people that you think are going to be part of the ship that you're, launching in the future going forward and talk about your plan. And I know that's when you have the press conference. He does that in the press conference, right? Every time I used to talk to our coaches, or I thought for myself, every time I'm actually in my press conference, I'm talking to my team. Yes, I'm talking to the media, but I'm also talking to my team through that press conference. I think those are the things I would encourage to do at the beginning. And then I think the main thing and the hard thing is going to be, finding the right coordinators so you can be the head coach. Because you've never really had a chance to learn how to be the head coach. And I will say, I think D'Amico Ryans had a big part of this. His success in Houston, a great player, captain, all that kind of stuff, I think really helped. I think it helped Antonio Pierce too. But I think for Mayo, I think the main things are finding the right coordinators and then contacting it and having conversations and being very open and being very available right now as you spread your message of what you want this team to be going forward.
When you talk about the coordinators, do they necessarily have to be experienced? I see Bobby Slowick's a first-time coordinator. Ben Johnson, first-time coordinator with a rookie head coach with Detroit. Those guys are not experienced. And I also look, Mark, sometimes at the more experienced guy, if he still is of an age where he might want to be a head coach, is that a positive? Everybody's trying to get to the next level. How do you deal with that dynamic? I don't have a specific question. How do you deal with that dynamic as a young rookie head coach who might be having people around him who are either experienced in a head coaching position or on the make for another one? Yeah,
I think it's a fair question. I look at it this way. I'm not as concerned. If I'm worried about the coordinator is going to want to be the head coach, I probably don't, I can't think that way as a head coach. Just like, and I think it's better for a player that way. Mayo spent his life knowing that every year they're going to try to replace you. That's the life in the National Football League. And same with coaching. He's going to realize that's just as bad, and if not worse sometimes, because of how much turnover there is in the coaching department. The thing I think that's the most important, Tom, is when you're thinking about Mayo and what you want to do, it is the scheme. It's the system you want to be a part of. It's not so much the person. Having to go and take the leap of faith, say, can this person be a good play caller, is risky. It is. And it's difficult, but it's more about the system you want to run. What do you want to be offensively? What do you want to be defensively? And how do you want to interpret it? And you can see that people love what Baltimore's doing. Their defensive staff, everyone's entering all through their staff, right? To kind of say, that's a really great defense. And we can see the tentacles of Kyle Shanahan throughout the National Football League, or Sean McVay, that whole group, those two offenses, everybody wants to emulate or be a part of, or what Detroit's been able to do. So Cincinnati did too. But I think the main thing is what your system is the most important thing you've got to deduce first. And then you get those, interview requests out as fast as possible, because there was so much turnover this year. You've got to move quickly now.
Defensively, you have to look at their fleet of players, their scheme, Mayo's involvement over there, and say, good, all set. Offense, they are a friggin' blank slate. They have one running back. I did it the other day. Just trust me on this. They have 2.5 players who would be coveted by other teams and pointed to as top 15 players at their positions. And that's being generous. You have Ramondre Stevenson at running back, David Andrews at center, and maybe Demario Douglas as a slot receiver on the rise. Other than that, they don't have anybody under contract. That's why I'm not mentioning a Hunter Henry, for instance, who you'd say, we need this guy. So they have a blank slate. Is that good? with $68 million of cap space in the third overall pick? Or is it still going to put him on a massive learning curve?
It's going to put him on a massive learning curve. I dealt with that back in 2009 when I was the GM. And we actually, although I was within the organization, we as an organization made a change in terms of like moving the team to a different level of age, right? So we cut a lot of veteran players, guys that still could play 1 or 2 or 3 more years in the NFL, but we made a conscious decision, hey, we're going to get younger and rebuild this. Well, that was really hard. Almost we cut it too far, to be quite frank with you.
In getting younger and turning it?
Right, because we didn't have anybody in the locker room really to manage the players because they're all young guys. They're like, this is great. No one really knows what it's really like in terms of like, we need some veteran presence in here. There's a real truth to that. I've said it all year long. I said it before the season started. The Patriots don't scare anybody on offense. They just don't, and they still don't. Now, I think that's a good thing because you get to, again, think of your system. And as you're building your offense, this is the nice thing as I would do with my offensive coordinator. Take the 11 spots on offense and let's rank them 1 to 11 order of importance. I need to understand. And then take each position, Tom, and say, let's say we had right guard is number 10, right? All right, now I need you to break down the right guard and tell me in your system, what are the top 5 things that person has to be able to do, right? Because as we're going to, if he's going to be the 10th thing that's most important on offense, but his top trait is athleticism or footwork or whatever you want to say, we're not going to get that guy. So now I need to know exactly what are we going to get with this player at right guard, realize that we're probably going to get the 4th and 5th attribute, not the 1st and 2nd, and can we be successful there? And so those are the things that are diving into what Mayo's got to do with his staff as he gets it together.
Who's asking that question about rank the positions and who are you asking it of?
Yeah,
is that the GM asking the OC or the head coach?
I'm asking the OC with the head coach, but the general manager should be in there because he's the one or she's the one that's putting the team together, making the decisions on how we're going to build this roster. And so to me, it's the general manager sitting there with the coach. And I can understand like with Antonio Pierce at the Raiders. I mean, Tom Telesco, obviously right in the same division, but I can understand them trying to put a veteran there with him so that he's been through the fire and understands it to help Pierce navigate it instead of 2 people trying to just figure it out on their own the first time. That's a lot harder. That's what I had to do my first year in 2009 with Coach Morris, Raheem Morris. And it was difficult because you're so used to just doing director of pro or director of player personnel. And suddenly now you've got to help hire coaching staff and hire trainers and do PR and do marketing and do social events and all this stuff. And you're like, wait a second, I used to scout. Now I don't get to do that. So I think that'll be interesting for the Patriots.
And that's why I wanted to have you on in large part was your experience with Raheem is very similar to what the Patriots are going to encounter here with Jerod. What are the potholes and the pratfalls to avoid?
I think you got to trust your instincts. I think sometimes you can almost, when what I mean by that is the general manager, the head coach, and I think Jerod seems very strong natured, like very strong minded and everything which is great. But you do want to feel inclusive. You want to kind of get everybody on board and make everybody kind of part of the whole process. And I think you got to be careful about that sometimes. He's going to learn as a head coach how good his coaches really are in what capacity. But he's also going to find out which guys are good evaluators, just like his scouting staff. I mean, there's going to be scouts on the scouting staff that they have currently that aren't good scouts, right? But you got to figure that out. But you got to decide, did I give that coach or that scout too much authority on this decision with the third pick or the 2nd round pick or the 3rd round pick or that free agent? And that's where you've got to be very careful to sit there and say, what do I think? And if I don't agree with that person, I got to be strong enough to say, that's not the right decision for us, even though I know that's what you want.
And that's funny because when you're starting out with somebody, you and I say we just met, we go out to dinner and you say, I think I'd like to go to this place. And I have to say right away, right after meeting you and trying to build a relationship, well, that's not going to work. It's hard.
It's hard.
Mark, how important is final say and how important is it to have a cogent plan for giving that to someone so that folks know this is where I defer?
Yeah, I mean, I had final say in Tampa, but everything was collaborative, right? With the head coach, it was important. Here's the way I looked at it. Even if I had final say in my contract, right? I get to pick the draft picks. We decide who the free agents are, 53, taxi squad, practice squad, whatever. That's one thing. I thought game day roster, always I left that up to the head coach. Even though I had final say, like this guy's going to dress or this guy isn't. To me, he's going to go out there with those players and coach them on the football field. He should have that kind of side, like who's going to dress today. And I never took offense to that, even though I know I could have said, hey, Coach Morris, Coach Schiano, you know what, we're going to go with this young guy because he needs to start getting experience. We would talk about that off the field, but when it's that week, it's Sunday, and it's like, okay, who are we going with? I felt like that was it. But I also think the reason why you need that separation is, as a general manager on a football team and building a roster, it's hard as a coach not to think week to week. It just is. And as a GM, you'll do that too. You still have to be able to go, okay, what does this impact 2025? Or I can bring this veteran in, and yeah, he can play at right guard, but I do have that 4th round pick that we kind of all gave high fives to last year and said, hey, look, we got him. And now he's going to, you know, be a progress stopper for our rookie. And you need somebody to be able to sit there and go, whoa, I get that the coach wants this veteran guard, but we do have a young guy that we took him for a reason. We all felt good about it. And so that's where you need that balance of, you know, somebody that can say, I'm thinking 2025, not just 2024. But I think there's a blend there with the coach to be able to have his say on his final roster during the games.
I lied. I got more questions. What would you do with number 3?
Well, I would like to move up and get a quarterback. So I'd actually like to see if I could convince one of the other clubs to move a spot or two. As much as I would love to have Marvin Harrison, and knowing, talking to players and talking to people around college football, kind of the way we started this cast is I've met with a lot of guys, and he should be the Larry Fitzgerald type of feel, like where you're just like, yeah, we're going to be good. And if that's what it plays out to, that's what it plays out to. I don't mortgage the future for everything, but I certainly would like to be in a position. But I think if I had to, and it goes quarterback, I'm going to sleep pretty good with Marvin Harrison. I'll feel very good about it. And I know I still need to work on the quarterback position, but I can also look at the veteran world of that this year and say, is there somebody out there that can kind of be a blend while I maybe not in the perfect spot? And so the other thing that as an option, and I think Howie Roseman did a good job of this for a couple of years, and I know Jalen didn't play to the same level, but Howie wasn't sure about Jalen. So what did he do every year? Tommy traded down and made sure he had 2 number 1s the next year until he felt like Jalen was the guy. Then he used his picks up, right? That's a very smart plan. If you're not sure about what your quarterback situation is to compile multiple first rounders. So that way the next year you're in position to go make a move if you need to.
Would you keep Mac Jones on your roster? He's an asset. You're not going to get a trade from, he's an asset because his contract is manageable.
Absolutely, I would. Absolutely.
I would too. I mean,
there's no reason to get rid of Mac Jones. You know, again, from your point, if he gets into a game, can we still have a chance to win? Yes, I believe that. Financially, it's a bargain at this point. It's a bargain because I've already eaten the signing bonus. I already know what that is. So now I'm just basically paying the paragraph 5. And when you look at the world of backup quarterbacks and their salary, you're going to be hard pressed to do better. And you know, he still wants to prove something. You know, he's got a new staff to prove something, and he's still going to be hungry. And he doesn't want his NFL career to end. So it's not like he's going to be sitting in the corner feeling bad for himself. He knows he's going to have to work. And I think he's got that type of personality. Again, when you talk to Alabama guys, they all love Mac Jones. He's not a bad teammate or a bad guy from my perspective. I would want that guy on my football team because of the salary cap implication that what he can do.
one more last question. Elliot Wolf.
What's that?
Elliot Wolf.
Yeah, known him for years, right? Just known him forever. You know, can't say enough. I mean, he's been around a lot of championships. He's been around a lot of different ways to do things. He's been around, you know, arguably the best coach of all time. And his dad was obviously arguably one of the best GMs of all time. So I think Elliot's very much capable of the job because I think he's been so experienced. It would be, I think, an interesting move to have 2 people from within. To me, it comes down to what was their, if you could see it, or I would be prepping, and what was their relationship in the building, truly. And I think this is where I talk to Coach Mayo and be like, I don't want you to have somebody just because he's in the building and it's comfortable. I want you to like, did you like him? Did you guys collaborate? Did you talk? Because that's how Coach Morse and I got to, he would just come down to my office, even before he became head coach and became GM. We would just hang out and talk.
And you were director of pro personnel, so you guys could figure out whether your vision meshed.
Yeah, and we would just, but we just had this really natural communication, very casual, but he knew that it was very comfortable to come into the office, and we were very close in that regard. And so that made it helpful that we knew that we both were very going to work really well together. And I think that's the thing I would want to know from Coach Mayo is like, how many times did you actually have, you know, individual intentional conversations with Elliot? And if that feels like that's a good fit, you know, obviously he's been around the building and the Kraft family has a probably pretty good sense of him. That would be comfortable.
And Matt Groh is still here But what's interesting is, we talked about it earlier in this pod, is Bill Belichick is a domino that has to fall at some point. Would Matt Groh go and be personnel for Bill, or does Bill bring back Thomas Dimitroff or Scott Pioli or Lionel Vitalik? Anybody. There's so many different people he could bring back. But is it an awkward situation to have Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf as almost co-GMs with no final say? And it's very, it's almost too collaborative and undefined.
Yeah, that would be too much, I think. I agree with you. I think that would have to be defined behind closed doors, where everybody would say it's collaborative, but we all know who's actually making the final call. It'll be interesting. I think if and when Bill, where he ends up, what happens to that building in terms of people that could come along, and what's the implication if he does go to Atlanta, right? Does Terry Fontenot stay the general manager? What's his role become versus, who can I bring into my staff and who can I bring on board? So I'm sure that's all stuff that's being kind of worked out and kind of finalized right now. And I'm sure that'd be interesting to see how it plays out. But I think that would be too many people in the kitchen.
Yeah, it's going to have a ripple effect. All right,
Yeah.
I kept you, I would say 23 minutes, and I asked for 12. You were really, really terrific. Will I see you in Vegas?
Yes, you will. I will be there for a couple days. I think Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday, but I'm not staying for the game. I told myself I'll never go to another Super Bowl unless we're playing in it. So that's my guilt.
I'm out on the game too. Perhaps I'll buy you a coffee. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great intel. A fantastic guest. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on, buddy.
All right, good stuff from Mark Dominik. Now, we would be remiss if we did not focus in on the AFC and NFC championship games that are about to occur this weekend. Here are the odds, powered by PointsBet, which is a fanatic experience. The Chiefs are getting 4 at the Ravens. Total is 44. 44. Meanwhile, Lions are getting 7 from the Niners. They're playing out in Santa Clara. The total on that game is 51. 51. Money line on all these. Actually, for the futures to win it all. Niners are plus 150. Ravens plus 190. Chiefs are plus 375. And you can get good dough on the Lions at plus 820. What that means is you put $100 down on the Lions to win it all, you win 820. You put $10 down on the Niners to win it all, you make 15. Okay? How's that sound? Sounds good to you? Do you want me to tell you what's going to happen? Sure, I can do that. The Ravens are going to absolutely demolish the Chiefs. Oh, yeah, Mahomes is Mahomes. But the Ravens, if you haven't noticed, are absolutely pile-driving teams. And the Ravens, too, are really not complicit in their own demise. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They are extremely creative offensively, as you know, with Lamar Jackson. And the Chiefs right now, they are riding Mahomes in good fortune. Is that a really in-depth nuts and bolts breakdown? No, it's not. You didn't come here for that. I've been knee-deep on the friggin' Patriots. I just turn the games on like you and watch them. I'm not breaking them all down. But I do know the Ravens are pretty friggin' good. I'd take the Ravens. Lay them points. Niners, Lions, I like that total 51. The Niners can play some defense. I don't know. I don't really trust dome teams in the playoffs outside like the Lions. But I would take over the 51 there. They're probably going to score. I mean, what you need, though, there is a 31-20 game at least. That's a tough one. And the Niners didn't wow me. Okay, if I had to take a side on the spread, I'd take Lions. But I still think the Niners are going to win that. All right. I hope you enjoyed that. We will be back with you, obviously, next week. It's the week in between Super Bowl and conference championship games. We will be going to the Super Bowl in a short period of time. We will be providing you with daily updates from the Super Bowl. There's always a fleet of guests out there and intel to collect. But hopefully by the next time we talk, we will have perhaps a defensive coordinator and or a special teams coach established. They are kind of behind. They got to get some more guys in or decisions made. Try and circle up and see where they are on things. All right. Peace out, Girl Scouts.